yellow. So I'm painting this little red-eyed tree frog on a piece of A5 watercolour paper. Sometimes I make a grid when I'm planning out a painting. But on this occasion, I decided that I would just wing it. So I've drawn in the eyes. I've left a generous amount between each one, more than the width of an eye I've left in between them. And I'm just measuring out a few distances. So the distance between the top of his head and his lip is approximately an eye height, and then again from his lip to where the creases are on his body. And then I've sort of worked out that the size of his head, the height of his head, is about the same sort of height as his hand. So I'm sort of blocking it all out. I'm also drawing some really faint lines down the centre so I can keep everything in a central line. That's mainly what keeps me balanced when I'm sort of free-handing it like this, is to work out where the centre line is on the reference photo and where the centre line is on my drawing. And it kind of keeps everything in check and from wandering off, of course. So I'm also just putting in a little bit of shading where I'm going to want to put the darker bits in as well. So I'm using acrylic paints. The watercolour paper takes the acrylic paints rather well, actually. I've just got the System 3 set, and I'm using the sap green and the ultramarine blue, the cadmium red, the cadmium yellow, and the titanium white. So I'm not mixing up any particular special colours on my palette. I'm just putting the green straight down on the paper, just copying where it is on the reference photo. And then I'm going to add the colours straight into the green as I'm painting along. I tend to, sometimes I'll mix colours on my palette, sometimes I'll mix it straight on the paper or the canvas. So I've mixed a different colour green actually on the palette here. I've added some red to the green. So when you add red to the green, because it's a contrasting colour, it makes that green darker. So I'm using this darker green just to get in some of the darker shades on his skin, and also I'm putting that darker bit around his fingers as well and his toes. And then I'm lightening up that leaf as I pull that down. Now I will be going in with some black at the end to get that all a bit darker. But for now, I just like to have that red going through it. Because I'm going to be using red in the eyes and in the fingers a bit later, I like to have that red also in the green. And it just keeps everything harmonised, keeps it all nice and together. So I put down some blue. And then I've made a kind of silvery grey colour from using the blue, adding a bit of the red, which goes purple, and then lots and lots of white, and sort of mixed it until I get sort of a silvery colour that I like. So I'm just using that for the tummy and then putting on some white for the highlights there. I've been looking forward to doing the eyes. I was very excited to do the eyes. So I'm just putting on, just with a clean brush, just some bright red. Trying, of course, to keep both eyes exactly the same shape. And I'm adding a little bit of yellow straight into the red because there's a bit of an orange tinge to his eyes. So I'm just rubbing in that yellow. So with his toes, I'm just putting down yellow first, just a nice clean yellow. And then when I put down making up some orange, and then I'll put some orange over it. but not completely covering it. I'm still letting all that yellow shine through, and that's going to allow just to have some different tones showing through in his little fingers. I'm going to go in with some red just to darken a few little areas there. There we go, tidying up his eye a little bit by adding a little bit more yellow. And that will brighten it up. So here's some time for some black. So I like to use the black at the end just to get in those shadow bits and those really dark bits that the other dark colours just won't do. So I'm using it for the shadows under his fingers as well. So being mindful that the light is coming from above, I'm doing a deeper, darker shadow below his fingers and in those gaps that the light won't be able to get in, like between his leg there and his arm. There you go, the shadows on this really make it pop a little bit more. Just adding bits of black, just little touches of blacks and whites into the belly as well. And then a little bit of yellow. I'm going to go over with a little bit of yellow in the belly and over the greens just to give it like a little extra dimension, a little extra texture. And then I'm going to line the black bits in his eye with a bit of white and then put the yellow straight over that white. Now, if I were to put the yellow straight round the black bit of the eye, it's going to come out orangey looking. So I put down some white first and then put the yellow on top of that because the yellow shows through a bit better. And then I've just got a really, really pale yellow, almost white. And then I'm just plonking on a few highlights so he looks a little bit shinier. And do a few little dots as well, which gives a little bit of texture. And then all he needs is a bit of background. So I'm just mixing some different colours together, some blues and some reds and some greens. The greens within this blue and the red are going to desaturate it a lot more. And add lots of white to the background as well because that is going to completely lighten it up because I don't want the picture to be overly dark. And also I'm mixing all the colours, I'm just sort of smudging it all around on the paper because I don't really want to see the backgrounds. I want it to look slightly blurry. So like our reference photo where it's out of focus. And that will make our sharp frog look even more in focus. And I'm just adding a tiny little bit of detail here to the leaf just to give it a little something extra. And then we're pretty much done.